Hi, I'm Daydam and welcome to Mini Stories, the show where I make minis tell stories, make stories into minis, or just paint minis and tell stories. In this video, I'll be using tarot cards as an inspiration for a new diorama and original story. Before we start, let's set the rules. First, I'll randomly draw one major arcana card to act as the overall theme for the diorama. Second, I'll draw two additional cards from a full deck to give additional context to the narrative. Finally, I won't just copy the cards' designs, but will try to incorporate as many elements as I can to represent them all. For this first project, I drew the Hermit reversed, the Ten of Swords, and the King of Wands reversed. It took some time, but in the end I think I found a cool idea for this combination. Allow me to explain while I cut some plastic art to prepare the base. The Hermit is the card of introspection, of following our inner guide. Turned upside down, however, we get lost in our own self, resulting in isolation and paranoia. The Ten of Swords means failure, our own thoughts and ideas represented by the blades, literally stabbing us in the back. Finally, the King of Wands, once a passionate leader, becomes forceful and impulsive, driven by his own ego when upside down. Mixing all of these together, I started thinking about imposter syndrome, but I'll explain more in a moment. Once I had the floor of my diorama ready and glued to the base, I drilled a hole to act as a guide for the main element of this project, a computer desk sculpted by Lutz Studios. This took me 3 attempts since I was somehow unable to leave a precise mark where I needed the guide to be. With this ready, I sanded everything until the edges of the plastic art were flush with the plinth before applying Tamiya putty, and while I do that, let's discuss the idea. I feel like imposter syndrome goes perfectly with those 3 cards, our inner thoughts making us doubt every decision, stabbing us in the back over and over again, and sometimes even making us act impulsively just to try and prove to ourselves that we are good enough, only to end up making a mistake and sinking deeper into the darkness. Yeah, I think that's a good starting point. I'll add the computer screen as the only light source representing the Hermit's lantern against the darkness. I will add references to the other 2 cards as well. One will be pretty obvious while the other might be more obscure. Let me know in the comments if you found them. And while I prime the base, desk and chair, allow me to remind you to click the like button and subscribe if you want to see more, and let me know if you'd like me to make more tarot-based dioramas. Now it's time for me to paint and time for narrator Daydam to tell us the tale of this lone scientist.
Warning, synthesis failure.
Dr. Lucian Wiles cursed audibly, slamming his hands on the keyboard, its already damaged hinges threatening to break under the weight of his repeated outbursts. Frustration burned within the man, accompanied only by the exhaustion of someone who had spent the last 46 hours working without ever stepping away from the computer. His hands were numb from taking notes, typing on the computer, slamming the desk when his work failed, and then repeating it all over again and again. Lucian needed to sleep, he knew that. After so much continuous effort, his brain was starting to act lethargically, ideas melding together into an undiscernible jumble. Still, he pushed through the tiredness, reviewing his formulas for what seemed the 50th time. He needed more time. A loud thud made Lucian jump in his seat, and he spun to look at the only entrance leading into the tiny room. In the near absolute darkness, the metallic rattle of the door being slammed repeatedly was the only proof of it still being there. Lucian could barely see the soft light of the screen reflected onto the safety glass that covered the entrance, creating an additional barrier between him and what lay beyond the door. Releasing another curse, he turned toward the computer, working as fast as he could. He needed to find the cure before the creatures managed to break in. He picked up his notes, crumpling a few sheets and tossing them aside, frustrated. He had even burned a few the day before, humiliated by how useless those ideas had been. Now, hearing the infected breaking down the door behind him, he decided burning his notes was not the wisest use of his time. After modifying some of his notes, he turned toward the screen, quickly typing down the reviewed formulas and restarting the simulation. Judging by the shrieks and metallic scraping coming from the entrance, he was sure this would be his last chance of finding the cure. He was not the only one working on it. Ever since the infection had started to spread, all the available scientists in the underwater base Neptune 2 had turned their full attention to trying to synthesize a cure. The communication systems were still online, fortunately, which allowed them to share their knowledge and advance more quickly. Lucien, however, did not cooperate. It wasn't that he wanted them to fail, of course. He was, after all, working just as desperately as the others, if not more, and he would share the formula for the cure immediately if he managed to synthesize it. Still, he hesitated to share his findings so far. Many of the scientists in this base were the very best in the world. He, on the other hand, was just lucky to be there. Despite the horror and the urgency of this situation, Lucien couldn't help but feel that, should he share his meager knowledge, he would be exposed as a fraud and a failure. He knew nothing compared to them. If they couldn't solve this, then how could he ever hope to be of any help? A part of him, however, disagreed. A part that, despite the constant insecurity, was sure that he was the only one in the entire base who could find the cure. He was, after all, the one behind the outbreak. It hadn't been his intention, of course, just an experiment gone wrong which only acted as even more proof of his uselessness. He had needed a victory, had been desperate to prove to the other scientists, and most importantly to himself, that he was good enough to be among them. And in that desperation, he had created AB-55. Originally engineered to allow people to breathe underwater and improve their chances of resisting the pressure of the oceanic depths, this compound quickly proved to be far more catastrophic. Now, as the once human, now amphibian creatures finally broke down the door, crashing through the safety glass shortly after, Lucien found himself face to face with the realization that he had been right. His position among the scientists of Neptune 2 had always been undeserved.
Synthesis successful. Synthesis successful. Synthesis successful.
As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and a comment below to let me know, and subscribe for more. I'll be back next time with more minis to paint and more stories to tell. Take care, and thanks for watching.